Start.
Okay, guys, I am very excited to welcome our next guest to Let's Get Freaky. Tonight, we are joined by Leslie and Stephen Shaw. How are you guys?
Hi, we're so happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Quite well. Cheers.
Yes, he's got the
Cheers,
you.
thanks a lot.
We was talking before. You're English. You're from England, based. You're the first of you. You're the first to move to America in your
Uh,
family.
yes, I was born in 1960. My parents moved to America in 1956, but I did spend a summer going to school in 1967 in Oldham. So
Oh
I
wow,
do have, I that was with my grandparents. So yeah, I've
yeah,
I've got a fondness, and my sister had a fondness too. That's why she moved back to England.
yeah.
And married a Sinclair and does ghost hunting in old English and the Scottish castles.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
It's,
We're
it's
gonna
really
try.
fun.
We're gonna get them on too as well, hopefully.
Of
Uh,
course.
so you guys are authors. You've got an
Yes.
amazing book. Who they are and what they're up to.
Yeah, here it
And
is.
there it is. Who they are and what they're up to. I mean that I want to know. Where did it all start for you guys?
Gosh, a really long time ago for Stephen. He started experiencing, he and his family were victims of the abduction phenomenon. And he started being visited around what, age 3, darling?
Yes, I grew up in a family, a typical British family, conservative. Kind of we kept things to ourselves, especially things to do with the paranormal or the spiritual. I grew up in a family that came over from England. My grandparents came from Germany, so I had German, English, and Scottish in my background. The Newmans, the Shaws, and the Rows. So I grew up in a family that we had this family spirit guide whose name was O'Glegley that would appear to people at different times for different reasons. In fact, my uncle, who was married to my mom's sister, who his name was Griffiths, actually O'Glegley appeared to him in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, back in the early 50s after the World War II, and actually saved his life. So I grew up with this mythology and this knowing that we had a family spirit guide. So when I was 3 years old, I used to get visited from time to time by this invisible being that would be jumping on my stomach and my chest that would wake me up in the middle of the night. And it wasn't harmful, it wasn't malevolent, it just would wake me up. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought I'm 3 years old, so I wasn't thinking much as it was.
Just the way the world is. I guess.
Yeah.
So so anyway, fast forwarding to when I was about 9 or 10, that was when I started sleeping in a bunk bed on the top. My brother was on the bottom. My brother, 6 years younger than myself. So anyway, I was awakened by this strange sound that I hadn't heard before. And again, in the middle of the night,
You were 8 or
I
9, you
was
say?
about 9 or 10,
9 or 10.
around that area. And I knew it wasn't a dog. The dog wasn't there. I couldn't find the dog. So I climbed out of the bed, started going down the hallway, and my heart was pounding. This is important because I was in adrenal phase. My heart was pounding and I was actually scared, and I was a little bit terrified about what I was going to see when I came around the corner into the living room. And then I black. I black out. I can't remember. Can't
Just as he's about to turn the corner and see into the room, it just all goes black.
and I've
You know,
and I've tried different times with different people to try and get past that so far with the hypnotherapy, but it hasn't worked yet. So the next thing I recall is that I wake up back in my bunk bed uh, a few hours later, and I'm totally calm. Okay. Now, I saw my first UFO about a year or two later. It was again in Woodland Hills in Southern California, and I was just looking out the front of toward the east, and I saw this large orange globe that was just hovering in the air. Then it started moving very consistently over from south to north, and it was just not a plane. And interestingly enough, during this time period, there were a lot of UFOs being seen in the Woodland Hills and the Tarzana area. There, you can look them up, even in drive-in movie theaters. It was kind of something. Rocketdyne was like right behind where I lived, and there were different tests that were going off. So, anyways, I called to Griffiths Park Observatory the next day and said, "Did you guys see anything?" Being a kid, I was saying, Did you see anything? Well, son, call me son. Uh, no, we don't have our telescopes, pointed that way, but
Towards Woodland Hills,
we
right?
didn't, so
Pointed up.
that was my first one that I saw, and pretty much from about that time on, I started looking up and reading about UFOs, and I just been curious most of my life, and
And then he saw a couple more UFOs before I saw my first. He's seen 5, and the last 2 were with me. And it was it's one of these things where I believed him in his stories, but you know how it is when you hear something you think is so surreal and strange. You believe it 95% maybe,
Yeah.
and then I saw my first UFO and that was it. I believed 100% after
Yeah.
that. And that's about when we really started doing our research. But my experience was we were driving back home from a meeting that we had in Joshua Tree, California. We lived in Yucca. So we were on Highway 62 traveling west. And I looked up in the sky and there was a bright white ball up in the sky ahead of us and bright light. It got brighter and brighter. And I thought maybe it was a plane coming into, Palm Springs Airport.
right.
And it seemed to just hover there, which was strange, right? They're not supposed to just be able to hover. And then we got closer and closer, and it seemed to get brighter and brighter. And then suddenly it shot away north and over the horizon and gone in less than a quarter of a second, just lightning fast. If I were going to guess, I would say 20,000 miles an hour. And it took off at speed too. It didn't take off like slowly and got up to speed, just full speed, took off and was gone. And after that, I believed fully. And I was a journalist at the time, and I did the majority of the writing of the book. And Stephen, but Stephen wrote his family's experiences part. So that's why we're co-authors.
And I researched a lot too. So
And are my co-researcher and theorist. But it was about then that I said we really should write a book, or I should write a book, or whatever. And
we should write a book.
and then so we started doing our research in earnest. And it was actually about 5 years before that we heard about something that was critically important to our theories. We heard about nanodiamonds being discovered in the North American continent, up way north, and nanodiamonds, and they were found in 13,000-year-old soil. And we had surmised a long time before that there was an asteroid or a comet or a meteor impact of some kind 13,000 years ago that wiped out the woolly mammoth and the mastodon and the saber-toothed cat and the dire wolf
and the Clovis people.
and the Clovis people. They all died out at the same time. And I surmised that could have been maybe the Great Flood really did happen. And that's how all these plains animals were wiped out all at the same time. And then the nanodiamonds were discovered. And that is the smoking gun. Nanodiamonds form in no other way except in celestial impacts. What happens is the meteor or asteroid comes into our atmosphere dragging dust with it. And that dust superheats and forms these tiny little round microscopic diamonds. And like I say, they form in no other way. So we knew that the crater was somewhere, we surmised it must be under the ice sheet because it was so far north that the nanodiamonds were discovered, and they in the higher concentration, the further north you got. And then sure enough, in 2016, the crater was discovered under the Hiawatha Glacier in northern Greenland. And that cemented a lot of our theories in place. So that was a critically important moment that, okay, now we can prove it. Now we can prove that the Great Flood is real. It really did happen.
Yeah.
And this would have caused 2,000-foot high tsunamis worldwide, pointing to that shared experience and why there are so many flood myths.
1,200 at the latest count. Yeah,
Latest
1,200.
there are 1,200 separate cultures with flood myths in their
Yep.
most ancient lore, obviously pointing to a worldwide shared experience. And now we know for a fact that it did happen.
It actually happened. I think he wants to ask a question.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, no, that's cool. I've got so many questions. I mean, with the Great Flood, that's in so many different religions, so many different cultures around the world. And there's
Absolutely.
so much evidence, as you say, that points to that's what happened. That's what wipes out a lot of us, and a lot of possible technology that we had that may have been before that we've lost, maybe.
Exactly. We
And,
don't know what we were like before
exactly. In fact, we know now, especially now that we're doing CRISPR technology and the genome mapping and the DNA, we know that about 13,000 years ago, that there was actually a genetic bottleneck that occurred. In other words, that human population on the surface of the earth, which is important, the surface of the earth was reduced to about 10,000 individuals, which then means that we, our 8 billion that are on the earth right now, have evolved from a genetic bottleneck. In other words, that we could have been a heck of a lot more psychic, a lot more diverse. There's a lot of things that we probably would have lost in the process.
an enormous amount of people,
Yes.
a, a vast percentage of whoever lived on the surface died
And,
that day.
and the other thing we know too is that there was foreknowledge. People forget about this. There
Right.
was foreknowledge and forewarning. They say either go to the highest place, build an ark, or like in Darren Kuyu and
Dig underground.
in Turkey, the Anatolian.
The Anatolian Plateau.
Yeah.
The high Anatolian Plateau of Turkey has several underground cities, and there's an ancient, well, it's kind of they don't really call it a flood myth, because in that case, the god warned King Yima that there was going to be a winter like he had never seen before, that was going to last hundreds of years, and to dig in underground cities and bring down their a percentage of their population and some of their animals too, to survive. And we think that the reason that they didn't have to warn them about a flood was the Anatolian Plateau is rather high
Over 4,000 feet.
and very, very far inland.
Right.
So a flood, probably even a tsunami of 2,000 feet, may not have been able to reach there. So it's not exactly a flood myth, but it's still a huge disaster myth.
Yeah.
That disaster's coming. And we know that the layers of soil we were talking about earlier, the Uccello horizon is a layer of charcoal. And when meteors or asteroids come through our atmosphere, they frequently have air bursts in front of them that catch forests on fire. And it appears that 4 continents and 10 countries all had their forests on fire at the same time and laid down like a 1-inch thick layer of charcoal. And then there's 1,100 years of drastic climate change laid down after that, called the Younger Dryas boundary. And so it pointed to that not only did these tsunamis kill practically everybody, but then after that, there was 1,100 years of climate upheaval to the point where they wouldn't have been able to grow crops.
We were coming out of an ice age, and we got basically slapped right back into another ice age.
Right.
All right, and this is all scientific data. It's not rabbit hole stuff. It's verifiable, which we being from British descent, that we're no nonsense. We like facts. We like science. We like saying, okay,
Yeah.
what makes sense and what doesn't make sense.
Right.
So,
And then I've kind of sidetracked Steve's family, but his poor brother Philip, he was younger and he did suffer a great deal from the alien abduction phenomenon too. For 2 years as a child, he slept in a closet because he was afraid of, quote, the little men
that would
come
Come
to
at night.
visit him at night.
Wow.
And one time when he was 16 years old, he actually saw a gray alien in his room before he had a blackout, one of these blackouts.
This is in a totally different house that my father and I and my brother built up in the woods in Sonora.
Right. The phenomenon has followed the family to all different locations. It's not like a haunting that, tends to be at one location more.
Yeah.
But they've followed the family in all different places.
Yeah.
And Stephen is still being bothered. Whenever he is about to enter the dream state, he is almost like harassed, like they're just on the other side of the veil, waiting to well, I call it harassment. I don't know what else you'd call it,
Yeah. Would you be able to tell us what sort of things you're experiencing when that's happening?
Well, Stephen had you had
Well,
his
let
family-
me tell you about what happened.
the 18 you're
Yeah,
at
when I was 18
18.
in early 1979, before I went in the military, become a CB in the Navy for 9 years, for 6 years, sorry. Um, this was an event that my sister, my dad, and we all experienced that, over a week's period of time. Is in January of 1979. The first night, my dad, apparently his closet doors opened and closed on him, and I just thought that was very strange. My dad being a cabinet maker, I was a cabinet maker, no nonsense again. I said, "Okay, Dad," I didn't think too much of it. I said, "Steven, my closet doors opened and closed on me last night."
And he had those accordion type of doors, that don't just easily open by themselves, say, or
Right.
something.
So the next night, I was reading a book that I wanted my dad to read. I was into, I was studying Tai Chi at the time, and I was also reading Paramahansa Yogananda's stuff, Autobiography of a Yogi, and I had this little book that was his metaphysical meditations, and I thought, my dad might want to read this kind of stuff. So I said, "Hey, Dad, you should read this. Read some of these meditations." And about 9 o'clock at night, I gave it to him, and about half an hour later, he came into my room with the book, and he said, "Stephen, I think I'm hearing things." I said, "What, Dad?" "I'm hearing a silver bell in the wall by the chimney." I said, "Really? Okay." All right. So I went there, and sure enough, the sound of a pure silver bell being rung inside the wall, inside the 2x4 wall. Okay. Which, obviously the resonance, you have to have, room to like move something like that. So then I said, "Okay, maybe we're hearing things." So I got my sister. My sister at that time, being 5 years younger than me, being 13, really wanted to have nothing to do with this kind of stuff. She was like turning a blind eye to everything. Said, "Karen, are you hearing the same thing we're hearing?" And she said, "Yeah, that's a silver bell." And it went on for, we banged on the wall. It went on for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then it stopped. The funny thing is that the next day we called my mom and brother who were living at the house we were building up in Sonora, California, which is 335 miles away up in the Sierra Nevadas. And we said, we heard the silver bell. And my brother got in the line and said, "You know what? About that same time, our mom picked up the phone, hearing this like ring, like a bell. And on the other end, some entity said, 'I am the invisible on Beachy,' or something like that." My brother says the phone never rang, but she just picked it up. She
But
heard
she
this
heard it
bell.
ring and
Okay.
Wow.
picked it up.
Swear to God.
Mhm.
Now, the next night, okay, I decided to go and sleep in my room and, on the bottom bed. And I was awakened by this sound and in the air. And I just thought maybe it was like, I don't know what I thought. I thought it was a bug or a fan or something like that. And I kind of turned over and I kind of looked down the hallway, and the kitchen light was on. I thought, "Oh, okay, I just heard something." So I rolled on my left hand side, and then from the base of the bed, the base from the foot of the bed, it was pushed twice, kind of gently, but twice, like somebody saying, "Wake up." I thought, "Okay, I live in California, been through earthquakes. Maybe it's an earthquake." Trying to think logically, and continued to try and go to sleep. And then it pushed twice a little harder. And then the third time, even harder. And then the fourth thing was I was tapped on my right shoulder like an index finger going tap, tap, tap. And at this point, I'm both scared and annoyed. I said, "Okay." So I rolled over and I said, "What?" And there was nothing there. And then I black out. Okay.
Another blackout.
This blackout, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, the next night, I was afraid to sleep in that room. So I went to said, "I'm going to sleep in the living room this time." I just wore my clothes, my cabinet maker's clothes from that day of work. And I just went to sleep. And I was, when I woke up again, and it's basically dark at, 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning
In the winter.
in the wintertime here. And I woke up and I looked over at my piano because I was thinking about what I was in a group at the time. So I was thinking about what I was going to play that day and listen to the little fountain in the other room. So I was awake. I was alert. And then it's as if this entity kind of knew that I was awake. And from behind me, from about 25 to 30 feet, this tall blue white entity, about 6 to 7 feet tall, kind of skinny, just moved and kind of floated vertically to my right side. And the whole room, swear to God, was filled with blue white light, and it stopped by my right side. And as it stopped by my right side, the whole right side of my body was bisected in a sense that I could not move my right side of my body.
Or
I could
feel
not
anything. Yeah.
feel. It wasn't in a
Wow.
menacing way, but it was that I was literally paralyzed on the right side. And here I'm thinking, oh man, I'm going to meet Old Glegley, the family spirit guide. This is what I'm thinking because I wasn't thinking about aliens at the time, but I was thinking I'm going to meet Old Glegley. But part of me is like really, really excited, but I realize I can't even move my right eye. So I'm like 50% excited and 50% scared. And it leaned down to me and it said in my ear, "Steve," kind of in a whisper. It
Whoa.
was in a whisper. It wasn't male or female, so I don't know whether it was male or female. And I was like, wow, am I going to actually see the face of, Old Glegley, like some people in my family had seen? And then I stayed paralyzed for a undetermined amount of seconds, and then it left. And then I can't remember to this day whether I went and told my dad.
Another
Okay.
blank of memory.
What
Yeah.
I do know, and this will blow people's minds, 6 hours later, it was about 11:30 in the morning. My dad and I were getting hungry. We had our shop out of our house, so I said, "I'll go down to Jack in the Box and, get some, Jumbo Jacks for us, whatever." I reached into my right-hand side pocket. I had nails and coins, American coins that I just had in there, and I pulled them out, put them on the table, and they were they were all magnetized. I could pick up the coins with the coins, the nails with the coins, it didn't matter. I could pick them right up, and that is not supposed to be possible.
Yeah, it's supposed to be impossible
Supposed to
because
be and I've tried to duplicate it, and
because
I've
coins they make them on purpose to not
yeah,
be magnetic, so
yeah,
they can go in Pepsi machines and cigarette
Yeah.
machines.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and the final thing that happened after that, I decided to go back to sleep in my bedroom, and my dad was awakened the next night by he just saw this blue white light, this out completely enveloping my door because our bedrooms were separated by a hallway, so he could look right down to my bedroom. And he was going to get up and investigate, and a voice came in his head said, "Relax, Jeffrey." The English Jeffrey, the GEO Jeffrey, right? Said,
Yeah.
"Relax, Jeffrey. Just go back to sleep. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. Just go back." And he went back to sleep. And I have
Wow.
no memory whatsoever of that. I have no memory of whether I was taken, whether what happened, but I these events were experienced really by 5 different people. I consider my mom and my brother
Right.
too, but
Yeah.
But
it was
until
very odd.
Philip actually saw a gray alien in his room, we really weren't 100% sure what the phenomenon was because we've tried, like I said, to break through Stephen's memory block for those black times with
With black
hypnotic
box, yeah.
regression, but the
Yeah.
block is just too well placed, and so far we've been unsuccessful. Still, this seeing something strange and then blacking out and then waking back up in your bed, this is a signature of the abduction phenomenon.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
once Philip saw the gray, then we were sure what we were dealing with at that point.
Wow. Wow.
Yes, it's bizarre.
Wow. How
And these
long ago?
experiences. Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
I was going to say, how long ago was it that you saw the grey?
Philip is the one who saw the gray, and he was 16 years old. What year would that have been, dear?
Okay, he was born in '66, so that would be '84.
So in 84, he saw the gray alien in his
He
room.
had a lot of things happening to him in '84. He saw
Yeah,
2
orbs going through his
well,
body.
he saw actually 2 white UFOs outside of his bedroom
And
window, then he
UFOs.
blacked out, so there were a number of things. He was a very, very bright man. He taught college calculus just for fun, for some extra money, and
Wow.
he was an engineer and a draftsman. He led kind of a life more like of a hermit. He never really had much in the way of, like, relationships with, like, getting married or anything like that,
We
so
think it was early trauma from these
so
experiences.
in
Yeah.
2017, the culmination of this whole thing happened, which was a horrible year for Leslie and myself. Well, she lost her father. Then we had to have our
Her
favorite
dog.
dog put down the
Yeah.
next day, and then
Oh,
in late August, my dad died from cancer. And my dad and I were like best friends. We worked together, And
we think
then
these,
that really kind of had a negative effect on my brother who was
yeah.
taking care of my mom who had Parkinson's and, advanced arthritis. So, on my brother's birthday, December 1st, 2017, he killed both his cats first, apparently, and then he took a shotgun, blew my mom's head off, then he blew his head off.
Oh man.
And, this is at the house we built in Sonora, so, I lost almost my whole family within about a three
Within,
and a half to
Oh,
4 month
yeah, we
period.
still have his sister, and that's
My
his
sister,
only
I
oh,
still have my
only
sister,
close relative now.
but it was just he started, like, really losing touch with reality toward the end. He had all these Ring cameras, installed in the
Yeah,
house,
he
and
was
he
paranoid
he
about
became very he
everything.
started hearing noises, and he wasn't on a bunch of medications, he just the stress and also all the stuff from his early life. In
Yeah,
fact, I asked him many times about his early life, and he said, "I just can't remember it."
he has hardly any
He
memory
had
of
blocks, he
his
did.
early life.
Yeah, it's true.
wow.
Yes, it was
Oh,
very
I'm so
tragic, and we think
sorry
it's,
to hear that. Yeah.
yeah, we think it was is related to this phenomenon because he seemed like emotionally stunted his whole life. Like I say, he became a hermit and a miser, and didn't ever have any long relationships of any
Yeah,
kind.
really, he only
So
had one relationship, and after that, he never had any other female relationships.
it
He
was
just
quite
at
he
all.
was quite like emotionally stunted his whole
Yeah.
life, and we think
Yeah.
we attribute a lot of it to this phenomenon. But
Yeah.
as fascinating as this phenomenon were, they were kind of more the impetus for our writing our book rather than what the book is about. We talk about our early experiences at the very beginning, but then we oh, and then after that, uh, we had to assume that people picking up the book might not know anything about the UFO phenomenon. So in chapter 1, we do a very fast history, like a UFO 101 kind of class, just explaining almost in bullet points, highlight events. And I focused mostly
Mass
on mass
sightings.
sightings because, a single person seeing something can be, it could be a lie or they could be crazy or something.
Yeah.
But when 300 people call the police and say there's a UFO in my backyard, then, we
Yeah.
know that there's a
It's
real happening
undeniable.
there.
Yeah, for
And so
sure.
that's the first chapter, and then, but after that, we start getting more into the meat of our theories.
Did you have any,
Yeah.
another specific question for us, Tommy?
I've still got loads, but the thing is, you guys, you're answering my questions. What I like to do is I let the guests talk, and
Okay.
9 times out of 10, you answer a question that I'm going to ask. But I have still got loads of questions.
Well, I'm sure the main thing people want to know is, who are flying the UFOs in our skies
Yes,
and what do
I
they
do.
want?
I definitely want to
Um,
get into that.
yeah,
Can
when
I
we
can I just ask you? Sorry.
sure.
So before you met Steve and Leslie, had you had any experiences yourself, or was you interested in the subject?
The only really bizarre experiences I had were more spiritual. I had like I was standing in front of a church and a statue, and suddenly I felt this wave of love, and all of it's like the world went black, and a beam of light was shining on the statue, and I was hearing music, and then someone
Oh
spoke to me,
wow!
and I snapped out of it. And then another time, I spoke in tongues. One time, I was sitting around with friends, and I felt my consciousness be pushed down, and then I woke up. I mean, I don't recall what happened, but when I came to a few minutes later, my friends were all looking at me like I was a ghost or something. And it turns out I was speaking in a male voice in an Arabic language or something for a few seconds.
Wow!
But other than that, I wouldn't say I had any UFO or phenomena before I met Stephen.
Yeah,
Uh, but this theory about the Great Flood, I've been kind of building on that for most of my life too. When I was in 20, I first
Right.
thought of it. I said, well, if there was a great flood and it flooded the plains of North America,
yeah.
the Coriolis effect would cause the water to try and go west because the Earth travels east underneath, out from under the water, so to speak, and that's why all our ocean currents travel west along the equator. And I realized that the water would have to go between the mountain ranges towards the west, between the Rockies and the Sierra Nevadas and the Sierra Madres. And that's where the Grand Canyon is. It's a relatively low part of the ground. And I believed that the Grand Canyon was caused by the Great Flood. It was actually a flood, a
A
drainage for
huge
the floodplain.
drainage basin, exactly.
And so I think that I know it's crazy, but I believe that in not the Grand Canyon wasn't carved over millions of years, but rather in a couple of weeks after Hiawatha
Yeah,
hit.
you look at the
Interesting.
layers that are there. It's interesting. I read a book back when I was 18 or 19 called The Man Who Walked Through Time, about a man who walked the whole distance from the southern point of the Colorado River, the Grand Canyon, all the way to the northern point, and he cataloged the different layers, very clean layers of rocks. When you think about, like, you cut through a cake, okay, you cut through a multi-layered cake, okay, you cut through it, you're going to see the layers. But if you just do it over a long period of time and it gets hot, it's going to be all mushy. Like you see things like in other places that the total amount of volume that is currently in the Colorado River does not account for why it's almost 2 miles wide. I mean, there must have been at some point
A
a
massive amount of
huge
water
amount of
flowing through
water,
there.
and basically those layers were already there. It's not like it happened over a long millions and millions of years. And some meteorologists and geologists are coming to the same conclusion
Yeah.
that this thing was actually a drainage basin. The water had to go somewhere, and it basically was like funneled through the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas. Okay, so it's a drainage basin,
But I
basically.
came up with this theory 45 years ago.
Oh
And
wow.
then
Yeah, roughly.
and then started working on that theory, and then sure enough found the crater that is the cause of the Great Flood. But so about then is when we started really researching the book, and right away we noticed that UFO theories were not aligning with what UFO facts we had.
Right.
People are saying, "Oh, they're coming here from distant star systems," and that makes no sense. They're seen 10,000 times per year, every year, and we figure that reporting is somewhere around 5 or 10%.
Yes.
So it's somewhere between they're coming here between 100,000 and 200,000 times per year that they're sighted.
This is according to like Graves and Grush and some of the different pilots and whistleblowers that did
They say reporting is like
Yeah.
about
yeah, the
5%.
Yeah.
congressional disclosure thing
Mhm.
that happened this past summer, that they're watching and dogging our submarines and our surface vessels, not just United States, but the Chinese and of course the Russians. That
Right.
these are dogging us all the time. They're very concerned, and they have a very good reason why they are.
And then another theory that wasn't making any sense was that, the theory about the abduction phenomenon. The theory was that, oh, the aliens are just curious about us and they want to take some samples for scientific research and they're going to get a cross section of humanity. But that is not what is happening. What is happening is that mostly it's a Caucasian phenomenon. 94.6%, one study I looked at was it's that of abductees are Caucasian, and they don't take just one person for a samples. They take that same person again and again and again and again through their lives, and then they begin taking their children and their grandchildren. The phenomenon, it's like they found a genetic DNA strain that they like,
Yeah.
and for their criteria, whatever their criteria may be, exactly. Once they find a genetic profile that they like, they continue to harvest that profile for many, many years to come. And that makes no sense compared to the theories of, scientific research. To me, it seems more like they're harvesting a product that they need.
Right, necessity.
Like I made an analogy in the book to like a farmer and his cow. Every day, the farmer abducts his cow from the field, takes it into the barn, and takes out the milk he wants. Then he puts the cow back into the field to eat more grass and make more milk. And the farmer also protects his cow from predators. So, and we found in Steve's family that this spirit guide, which we actually think is having to do with the alien phenomenon, we noticed that they also kind of protect the family too, like
Yes.
a farmer would protect his cow.
Yeah.
I should have died a couple times in my life where
He was saved,
my life has been saved. I don't even know the days and the times when it happened. So
Yeah, he was
Wow.
rescued from a a phantom lifeguard one
Well,
time that
yeah,
that
yeah.
vanished right
We can
afterwards.
go into that if you want.
Yeah, man.
know.
Please do.
So we just, go ahead.
Oh, my dad was a redhead. It's
Yeah.
interesting. And
Yeah.
my dad was a
Yes.
Shaw. My dad was a Shaw, and my mother was a Roe. But I looked up the derivation of the name Roe, and it means the redheaded ones. And I found
Wow.
that kind of funny. And
Yeah.
Shaw basically means the wood nymphs or the wood people. And
Interesting.
then my great grandparents were Newmans from Germany. That means new man. Actually, the translation is new man. So, but my mom was an automatic writer. She
Yeah,
she
they're a
knew things.
psychic
She knew
bunch.
things ahead of time that she shouldn't have known. She knew when her mother died, when her father died, and when her Uncle Clifford died, that were in England, and we were in Woodland Hills, California. And I remember specifically my mom picking me up when I was 9 years old from elementary school, and she was crying, bawling her eyes out. Said, "Mommy, what's wrong?" Said, "My mom just died." Well, how do you know? Said, "Well, I was contacted by automatic writing. I just got this feeling, and I just went into this, what she did.
Like
Wow.
a
She
trance. You
trance,
got
and
it
then she
into
was told that, your mother has just died." And sure enough, like
Wow.
a couple days later, we got contacted,
official word came
official
through.
word
Yeah.
from Great Britain. But again, this was stuff that I was I was born in a family that we just accepted this kind of stuff, and I certainly did not talk about this stuff with my friends at school. They would just think I was weird, or that I was possessed, or we had ghosts or something like that. It's something that we kept within the family. And at a certain point, when I was about 30, I had an event happen. Actually, when I was 31, it was 1992, April 1st. I was with my ex-wife, and we went to a beach called Nicholas Canyon, which is a few, maybe 20 miles north of Malibu, no, California. And I decided to do some body surfing, which was kind of a dumb idea. It was April 1st, and the Pacific's pretty cold. But I used to be a decent swimmer, so I thought, oh, I'll go out there with the guys. And so I went out maybe 100 feet or something like that, and was riding some waves in. And then it was cold. It was probably in the 50s. It wasn't warm at all. And then I noticed some of the guys, they started to go in, and I said, well, maybe I should go in too. And I'm swimming to go in, and I guess I was in a riptide, because I was trying to swim in, and I was getting nowhere. And I thought, oh my God. And my arms became like lead. I don't know if you ever had that experience where you're in really cold water where you can't move your arms. Literally, it's just basically like you're two lead blocks. And I said, oh my God, I
Oh,
am
wow.
going to die. So I'm thinking about like getting on my back, but no, the waves are pushing me further out. So I see this lifeguard at the tower, which is like directly in front of me. He's maybe like 125 feet away at least. And he's flirting with these girls, right? These girls, you could tell he's whatever, wearing his red shorts. And I yell, help. And then he couldn't hear me because of the waves. And I yell, help. And then finally I got up all the energy I could, and I yelled as hard as I could. And then all of a sudden he paid attention. And then I went down. I was like 6 feet under. And I thought, okay, I'm dead. I'm at least 6 feet under, and there's no way he can get to me. And I'm starting to see like the white light, like the sun. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh, this is not so bad. This is not so bad. I'm going to like take a gulp here, and I'm going to die, and then this guy, like in 2 seconds after I go down, he somehow gets to me with this boogie board, and he reaches down and he grabs my arm, my right arm, and he pulls me up. Somehow he found me in like faster than Michael Phelps or any human being can move. And he put me in the fireman's type of crawl type of thing around my neck. Said, just relax and I'll pull you in. And he pulled me in, and I could barely get out of the water. My arms were still like lead. My ex-wife just was not sympathetic at all, which was her, which was her. And I was expecting the lifeguard. I wanted to thank the lifeguard and say, man, but the lifeguard should have stayed with me because I almost died.
Yeah.
And I look around, lifeguard's not there.
He's just
No lifeguard.
Wow.
yeah.
Boom,
Yeah.
gone. On
Wow, man.
1992, April 1st,
And it's a
Nicholas
beach,
Canyon
there's
Beach.
nowhere to hide
Yeah.
behind.
And I mean,
Nowhere to hide.
a lifeguard would stay with you to make sure you're
A
okay.
lifeguard
Yeah.
You know?
absolutely would. My
Yeah.
dad was a lifeguard too when he was a young man in England, but
So either he was
Wow.
a flirtatious angel or he immediately dove back in the water or
No,
something. We
it's
don't
like
know.
he was not there.
Yeah.
I had another occasion too, which is kind of not as dramatic, but this was in 90, 2000, about 2000. Yes, I had run out of gas going to the gas station in my Ford pickup truck, and I was like about 100 feet from the gas station, and I decided to try and push the truck in myself, and I didn't realize I had a heart aneurysm at the time, but I was trying to push the thing in myself. I was in the center lane, and all of a sudden, this guy from out of nowhere, he opens the side door with these really wild eyes. This white guy, he says, "Ramming speed, Captain." And he just basically grabs the door with me, and we pushed my truck into the 76 station. And I turned to, like, after I get it there, I said, "Thanks, guy," and he's gone. He's just gone. And it was like
Wow.
the weirdest thing. He just comes out of nowhere and says, "Ramming speed, Captain," with these great these eyes that are too big. It was like
Interesting.
it's just like weird stuff.
Wow, man. I mean,
Yeah, his family is because his family has like dozens of bizarro experiences
Well,
like this.
but we have
We could go on all day about
wow, man.
like some of his parents' experiences too, and
Yeah.
it's just that we think that a lot of this was overlapped memories. Especially the stranger experiences. Like we know that they tamper with memory, and sometimes that people will remember their experiences quite weirdly, but that's not what happened. They were actually abducted, and then their memories were tampered with.
Yeah.
For instance, one time Stephen's parents saw a bat on Chinese New Year.
My mom saw
My
it.
mom saw it. A basket came out of a hole in the ceiling and dropped to the floor, and it opened up, and all these little Chinese men got out.
Well, they were
only a
like
couple
five
of
foot tall.
5 feet tall, and all started dancing around. And later, she saw all these footprints all in the carpet, like somebody had been dancing around on them. But I think it's more of a tampered with memory in this case.
Yeah.
I don't really think little Chinese men came out of a basket through the ceiling. I think that she was abducted, and they tampered with her memories.
Yeah.
And
They put these
They
memories
do that
there.
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. You hear that a lot.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. Can I just
And
ask
so,
with the
so
lifeguard? Was
What's
he
that?
was the lifeguard dressed like a lifeguard, or what was he
Yeah,
wearing?
he was like, Baywatch. He had the red shorts on, just
Wow.
the red
Okay.
shorts like on
the
Baywatch.
tan, the blonde hair.
Yeah, he did. He was a white guy. He was a white guy, probably
Yeah.
about my height, roughly 5'9", 5'8". And yeah, he was just like, he was a lifeguard, and it was just one of these things that if you think from physical dynamics that there's no way he could have gotten to me that quickly,
Yeah.
especially going against the waves and be able to reach down and find me first time. Just grab when I'm like 6 feet under, and I'm ready. I'm within a second, maybe two, of
Yeah.
taking
That death gulp,
taking
huh?
that death gulp.
Yeah.
I'm just like within that. It's
Wow.
like it just did. These things, they kind of didn't occur. They did occur to me, but I realized it was something special. But this was before we decided before we met to
Doing
start
our
with.
research and
Before
stuff.
we
Yeah.
I started doing my research way before the internet, and before social media. I actually did the stuff with Graham Hancock's books, and William
Yeah.
Bramley's stuff, Fingerprints of the Gods and the Gods of Eden. And a lot of this whole journey for us has been trying to find out what is actually happening, why I've been approached so many times, even to this day, and I just wanted to find answers. And
Well,
we
the
started
answer is that they like your DNA,
they
Yeah.
yeah, because
you and your
yeah,
family's
Well,
I
DNA.
guess so.
you
Yeah.
hear that so often. I've talked to many people that
Yeah.
have experienced abduction. And normally 9 times out of 10, it's in the family, as you say.
Right.
It's the mother's experienced, the grandmother's experienced it. Yeah. So
The
is
kids
it
start
something
experiencing it.
something
Yep.
to do with the bloodline?
Absolutely. We think so. That's why they're taking Caucasian people. They want lots and lots and lots of Caucasian DNA. And we believe it has to do with their bizarre breeding program, their alien hybrid breeding program that, as strange as it sounds, our research is showing really does happen. One of our favorite sources of abduction information was from Professor David M. Jacobs. He wrote several books on the subject. He was a professor at, I believe it was Temple University, taught a class in ufology for 25 years. And he himself did, in his long career, he did 10,000 or so alien abduction
Hypnotic regressions.
hypnotic regressions. And of the people, those 10,000, 1,100 of them were women who claimed that they were taken and impregnated, and then 4 months later taken again, and the fetus is removed. And then sometimes several years later, they are taken again and introduced to their offspring that appeared to be human alien hybrids. And we feel that this is something that they're doing in order to integrate into our society. They're trying to create spies, so to speak, to infiltrate our government. And we think it's because they're particularly terrified of our nuclear weapons. And the reason I think that is the testimony of Admiral Byrd in his diary. He went under the ice sheet and met with some of these underground people that we think are flying some of the UFOs in our skies. They're called the Ariani. And they basically told him that what their agenda was. They said, normally we don't have anything to do with you people. Just let you barbarians have your wars, and we ignore you most of the time. But now you have unlocked the power of the atom, and we can't let you do that. We can't let you have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
So they and then they told us that, oh well, but we'll harbor safe some of your people and your genetic material in case in the future you do blow yourselves up, and we'll have the seed of your humanity here. So that explains a lot of the abduction phenomenon right there. I think he was lying a little bit to a certain extent because we think they also need us, our surface DNA. I think that perhaps thousands of years of living underground or under the ice sheet, they may have become less viable, and that may be why they need regular infusions of surface DNA.
And the cow mutilations too.
Right. We think they have herds of cattle underground as well, that they are also
Interesting.
becoming less viable, and that's why they're taking the sex organs of cattle out of their and
They're taking all the blood.
all the blood. They exsanguinate them first. And so we know that they're particularly interested in our nuclear power. They started right after we dropped the bomb, and in World War II, they were following our planes with the little Foo Fighter guys, the little orbs that they use for observation.
The orange orbs that were plaguing the Japanese, the Germans, the
And us,
Brits,
yeah.
and us. We all thought it was everybody else, but
Yeah, we thought it was a Nazi thing, and the Nazis thought it was our thing, and some like
Yeah.
secret weapon or something. But it was really them. And then they started following our planes and our military on all their maneuvers, and they actually do weird things to our nuclear bases as well. There was the Malmstrom incident where they
in Montana,
where they I think it was in the late 60s.
1966.
66, thank you. And they one at a time, well, a UFO positioned itself right over the base, and one after another, all of the nuclear warheads went down, one after another, offline,
All 10.
all 10. And they're all on separate computer systems or separate ignition systems. So they were completely separate from each other. So this is 10 separate hacks at almost at the same time. And then there was the Minot incident where they also they moved the cement slab over one of the warheads
Over the silo.
and actually caused it to start to count down and then stop counting down after that.
And there are reports too from Great Britain and from Russia and from China where
Yes.
similar things have happened. This is a repeating scenario that is happening.
Yes, and UFOs were reported over all our military installations, not just the weaponry, but also the research. And the Roswell incident was very close to a Air Force base where the bomb was actually
White Sands.
It was the squadron that delivered the bomb was out of that particular base. It was
Right.
Roswell, New Mexico.
Yeah,
Air Base,
the Enola Gay, right.
And so that had something to do with nuclear weapons as well. And we now know from the testimony of the pilots at the hearings, the congressional hearings this last summer, that these things follow our military every single time they go out on our maneuvers all over the world. And every time they're quite concerned about our nuclear weapons and keeping close tabs on them.
Yeah.
And we think they are working with our government to a certain extent. There were supposed to be meetings between Eisenhower and the Nordic aliens. And supposedly their agenda was to get us to denuclearize, but we refused. But they did make an agreement where we would keep their secret as long as they gave us some of their technology, dribs and drabs of their technology. And we think that that's why the government to this day is keeping their secret for them, not participating, and if anything, hiding the evidence quite well. I documented in the first chapter of our book the whole quickly, but the Project Blue Book and how they've been suppressing the information for 80 some odd years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a slight change to the disclosure now where they're at least admitting that the phenomenon is real, which after 80 years of just saying, no, it's swamp gas, it's mass hysteria, it's your imagination or whatever. Finally, it just blew our minds. They, after the Luis Elizondo videos were released to the New York Times, the DOD, the Department of Defense, shocked us all by coming out and saying, yes, the phenomenon is real. And they released the full-length videos and said, but we don't know what it is. So they're still lying to us because we think they know full well what it is because they have crashed ships and dead aliens. And we know for one rumor was that they had a live one for many years called J-Rod, giving them information about the technology that they had essentially, picked up from crashes in our airspace.
Yeah.
There were a couple of more crashes than people realized. There was the Cape Girardeau incident and then the Kingman incident as well, in addition to the Roswell incident. So they've had some crashes. They're not foolproof either,
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions for us, Tommy?
It's so interesting. I think something we can all agree on that the government definitely don't tell us the truth. I think that's something,
absolutely they don't.
So do you think
Even in England, you guys have that underground, there's a big underground base under a mansion, right? I forget what it's called.
It's not Rendlesham. It's like
yeah,
else.
that's it. Oh no,
It's
Rendlesham.
a different one.
Right, it's
Rendlesham was a 1980 thing back in
that was at the
that was
military base.
that
Yes.
was a military base.
Right.
This was I don't know, I forget where it is exactly, but I heard there's like
well, in fact, Prince
mansion with
Prince
underground.
Philip, who just recently passed, he had a lifelong obsession and interest in UFOs.
He
In
was a
fact,
witness,
I believe
yeah.
I believe when he was like 17 or 19, he was riding a bike in the country and a UFO came across him, whatnot.
Like a cigar shaped one.
So
right?
yeah, so
Really?
it's interesting. The aristocracy has definitely had an interest in that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So do you
And
think
so,
when the Great Flood took place, do you think that that's when the split between the people on top and below happened?
yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely, we do.
Absolutely. I think what we think that happened was that another part of our book too. One of our chapters, we dove into like just how frequently these meteor and asteroid impacts hit the Earth, and just the ones that have been discovered. It's a lot more frequently than you think. There was a big one that hit 50,000 years ago here in Arizona.
And one in
That's
India,
huge.
almost
One
the
in
same
India.
time.
There's like they
Lonar
don't just happen
crater.
like every couple million years. They happen fairly frequently. So
Yeah.
in other words, and we also found out too that mankind, Homo sapiens sapien, our current form has been around for 122,000 years.
Yes, some people
Minimum
think of even longer,
300.
but we know for a fact that we've been around at least 120,000 years. And mainstream archaeology would have us believe that humans sat around for 107,000 years before, in caves, right? Just picking fleas off our butts for 107,000 years without getting around to inventing,
The house.
like the house, or
Or the wheel.
or the
Yeah.
wheel or something. And then suddenly 13,000 years ago, we started getting some gumption and deciding to start inventing things. And this doesn't sound like the human race
makes
to
no
me,
sense.
I mean, good or bad or whatever you think of the human race, we are a curious, industrious people, and we like
100%.
making things and
Yeah.
inventing things.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
what we think is that instead we became fairly advanced before Hiawatha struck. We'll never know how advanced, except one of the few things that did survive the Hiawatha impact was some of their crazy megalithic architecture that makes no sense for Bronze Age or Copper Age people to have
Yeah.
built.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
like the rose quartz inside
The Great
the
Pyramids.
Great Pyramid, the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid.
Sacsayhuaman in Peru, which is like 12,500 foot elevation. And the rocks are literally 7 on the hardness scale of
On the Mohs
the
scale.
Mohs scale, and they're literally melted together, or they're fused together, and they are earthquake proof. An earthquake cannot break those walls.
And andesite, the Sacsayhuaman is andesite. That's even harder than granite.
Yeah.
And I assure you, you can take a bronze tool and whack andesite all day long, and you'll just wreck the tool. It won't even chip the stuff, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're supposed to have cut 200-ton blocks and
We could
without draft animals and somehow drag them 2,000 feet higher than the quarries below, and somehow fuse these things together. And they didn't have draft animals. They didn't have the wheel. They didn't have any industry at all. And they
Yeah,
had bronze
it makes
tools. It
it
makes
makes no
zero
sense.
sense.
and we
So-
couldn't make it now if we tried, you know.
We can't. I
We
know,
haven't
we
got the
couldn't
technology.
recreate it.
We
Yeah.
we
Not
we
without
know
key mark.
we've actually met people that have actually been to Sacsayhuaman and said the
even more
pictures said the
impressive, yeah.
pictures do not do it justice. Says you
Wow.
just the energy and just by being there just and then Puma Punko, which is even higher, and
Just a little bit, like 300 feet higher.
but
Yeah.
it's like Puma Punko. They've only it's like a 13-acre area, but only like
It's 17 hectares to be
17
exact.
hectares.
But
Okay.
only about 2 of them have been
Right.
exposed.
And
So they're buried
these
still.
blocks, I did a lot of concrete pours in my life being in the military, right? And these blocks, these triple layered inward layered beveled blocks, and then they have on the inside, on the backside, they have these clamps, these metal clamps that were poured to hold them together. And they're all uniform. They're completely uniform in their shape and they're
Almost they're like
conglomerates. They're basically
machine
it looks
precision,
like it looks like they were actually poured. Yeah, it looks like they were poured as a form. Okay, like we do concrete blocks,
Yeah.
for building houses, cinder blocks. It looks like they were actually poured. They're so uniform. And if they had the technology to fuse rocks together like andesite, then they definitely had the ability to, number one, melt metal clamps on the back, which they had to have a forge and a blast furnace at least, and they had to have it on site. So they basically poured the blocks, popped them out, and then they basically put them together, and they put these clamps and they poured them and with metal. Supposedly, we
holding
didn't
it
have that
together, yeah.
technology at all. And of course, their fascination with mercury, which comes from Cinnabarus. So you have to have advanced metallurgy skills to be able to get mercury into its liquid state.
And these 2 sites, both Sacsayhuaman and Puma Punku, they're over 12,000 feet high, which is 2,000 feet higher than the tree line. So this stuff, it's not the altitude is so high that trees can't live there, and yet we're supposed to have built these colossal cities up there, and say, oh, they rolled them on logs. What logs?
No,
logs.
for sure. For sure. Even like just down the road from me, I'm an hour away from Stonehenge.
Stonehenge, oh wow. That's on my bucket list.
Yeah, it's a special place. But I mean, they say that they got them rocks from Wales, which from Wales to Stonehenge back in them days, that's a long time to carry those big rocks.
Over mountains.
Yeah,
right?
that's
there's a lot of mountains in Wales too.
Just no way that's how it was done. But yeah, I'm a big believer that. Sorry. I was going to say, I'm a big believer that we've been way advanced, and for whatever reason we was wiped out. We've slowly built back, and I believe that could have happened a number of times.
Well, yeah, because it took us 13,000 years to go from the caves to the moon. This time, in 107,000 years, you could put that 13,000 year block in there 8 times. So we could have risen and fallen and risen and fallen and risen and fallen or just plain risen. Imagine us right now with 85,000 years more of technology.
Yeah.
And,
Scary.
because that's
Do
where it
you
would have been.
do you think that's possibly what the Greys could be and things like that?
I
Us
think
in the
they look like
future.
human beings that have been underground for 13,000
13,000,
years.
yeah.
Okay.
Or they
So
could,
you think the
be.
Greys are from below?
Yes, we
Yes,
do.
we
Interesting.
think. In other words, we know that humans make very poor slaves. Okay, the
Yeah,
Egyptians,
we're a
Egyptians,
willful bunch.
The
Yeah.
Bible complains about it. The Egyptian mythology always complain about humans having the seven deadly sins and being too rowdy, too curious, too this just difficult. So yeah, we're playing around with CRISPR technology right now. We're curing some certain types of blindness, and we understand the human genome, and we understand the cutting and pasting. Well, if you wanted a race or a type of being that was based off the human being that maybe just a little bit artificial intelligence, but definitely telepathic and certainly not more like Vulcan, very, very logical,
The
but
Greys are
make good
described,
slaves.
yeah, the Greys are described as emotionless, completely emotionless, and they're never confused. They always know what they're doing next. They're very goal driven. Abductees never describe them as being like wondering what to do next or milling around confused. They just know, they take you, they take their samples and they do their experiment and whatever, and then they put the people back. And we think they sometimes don't put them back. We think a lot of the missing people in
Alaska.
Alaska and well, in all around the world, we think some of our missing persons have not been put back, and we don't know why exactly, except that are they also being used as slaves, as incubators? Have they? We've heard horrible rumors of dissections in the Mount Hayes base. So we think that, I've heard people wanting to go outside with signs going, "Take me! I want to meet the aliens. I want to go." We actually don't recommend the experience. It's not fun. It's traumatic and painful and scary, and it could be the last thing you ever see. Uh, you could be on a metal table, paralyzed, surrounded by aliens who are about to kill you.
Yeah.
And I think that belongs in a horror film more than so I don't think they're particularly benevolent towards us. I
Right,
think they have their own agenda,
right.
and if they require us to service that agenda, then so be it. And
Yeah.
we think the Nordics may be the ones kind of in charge. They're the ones that met with Eisenhower, and
Bird.
they do have emotions, and they are actually indistinguishable from human beings. And when you look at the gray anatomically, we have a lot more physically in common with gray aliens than we do with our closest other relative on this planet, which is the bonobo chimps. If you look at the skeleton of the chimp, they don't walk perfectly upright, or nor can they stand perfectly upright. They're still really a four-legged animal when they're in fear.
Yeah,
They run on all
they
fours
still run.
and
Yeah,
take to the trees still,
right.
So we're talking about that the grays are much more like we are than we are to any other creature. And all of the aliens, that all the different types that we've heard of, they are all bipedal hominids. They are all one head, two arms, two legs,
Yeah.
elbows bending the same way, knees bending the same way.
Right.
So we think that we're cousins to these people, and that Hiawatha, the impact of Hiawatha, the human race was separated into two. The half that kept the ones that escaped the flood, either going underground or blasting off into space, possibly to the other bases in our solar system. We believe they set up a base on Mars at one point. That's what the structures on Mars are.
Dark side of the moon.
The dark side of the moon has bizarre structures on it. Phobos, one of the moons of Mars, has a structure on it that's been found. So if either they escaped underground or they escaped into space, and they kept their technology. They didn't lose their technology. While the rest of us poor slobs on the surface,
And
first we died in droves, and then we got knocked back into the Stone Age essentially technologically speaking.
Yeah, we became cannibals and we didn't have civilization. That's why then all of a sudden you see like the Viracocha myths and the
Right.
Kukulkan and the
Right.
different ones, the teachers, the Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor and Ahura Mazda. These teachers, usually tall white guys with either red hair,
Caucasians with
Caucasians,
beards.
either with red hair or with flowing white hair, and they came down in their fiery crafts and they said, "Okay, you guys, okay, I'm gonna teach you now about medicine, about animal husbandry, and about how to build stuff."
They
I mean,
re-civilized
it's
us.
re-civilized us, and it's just okay. It's it's because they need us too. They actually need our DNA. That's what we really believe. They actually need us because number one, they live here, and they do need infusions of new DNA. In fact, I want to touch upon this real quickly. Everybody's familiar with the vampire mythology, right? The mythos of vampire.
Yeah.
How similar does that sound when you think about it to
The
alien
abduction
abductions? They
phenomenon.
come in the night. They're powerful. They paralyze you. They take your DNA,
They're,
your blood,
they're very pale.
and they can transform into different shapes.
And there's frequently a sexual component with it too. Uh, for instance, like the succubi and the incubi actually have sex with humans, and in the case of the incubi and the human female, they would have these false pregnancies. It sounds just like the abduction phenomenon, where they're pregnant, but later they give birth to just air, and that sounds a lot like like the taking of the fetus at like 4 months old, and so then the woman just gives birth to just gas. Just she had really bad gas,
And
right?
now that we have ultrasounds, there have been a number of obstetricians that have done ultrasounds on women. Said, yeah, your fetus is about 5 centimeters, like about the size of a baseball, an American baseball.
They've confirmed the
And then
pregnancy,
all of a sudden, yeah, they confirm it, right? Then the next thing, the woman doesn't have the fetus anymore, and it appears I did a secondary ultrasound like she was never ever pregnant.
It's like
It's
the womb is vacuumed
yeah,
out.
it's just gone. So you were as far as I can tell, you were never pregnant.
And then we have
Yeah.
the Dulce papers that I think indicate what they do with the fetuses. Uh, in Dulce, New Mexico, well, it's rumors, but there's supposed to be an underground base under the Archuleta Mesa. It's called, in the ufology circles, it's called the Dulce Air Force Base. And it's 7 levels deep, about 2 miles down. The top 5 levels are just supposed to be military personnel, but the bottom 2 levels are said to be joint military / alien personnel there. And one night, a security guard decided to venture down into the lower levels, and he became a whistleblower later because of what he saw. What he saw were hundreds of these vats that had either gray aliens or hybrid alien humans being grown in them. And then we think that's what they do. They take the fetus at 4 months, which is probably the safest time for the mother, and then they put them in these vats to finish developing.
Yeah. Wow. It's making so much sense what you guys are saying to me. You know, it really
Right?
is.
It explains so much.
it really
Why they're
does.
seen so often.
Yeah.
Why they're taking Caucasians, you know?
We're just examining what we've been able to find
Yeah.
and what actually makes sense. Not see we're not rabbit holey people because there's a lot of stuff that's out there that is just believe it or not, in the United States, guess what percentage of people in the United States believe that the Earth is flat? What percentage do you think? We're
Um,
350 million people.
I'd say it's probably going to be pretty high.
10% of people still believe the Earth is
That's
flat.
a lot. Yeah.
And as far as like the moon landing was faked, 12%. 12% of people in the United States believe that's like you put them together, it's like 40 million people. That's a huge amount that's still, they don't trust science, they don't trust the technology. It's like ridiculous. We if you don't trust science, then we couldn't be doing what we're doing right now. Okay?
And
Terms like ridiculous.
Yeah.
our theories don't require the existence of any theoretical physics. It doesn't require a wormhole. It doesn't require interdimensional travel. It doesn't require time travel. And, so many times it doesn't even require faster than light speed. which it's still theoretically maybe possible and maybe not. It would take Einstein said it wasn't possible for us to go faster than light, and maybe it truly isn't. And so it makes more sense on our theories because you don't have to believe any theoretical physics or apply any theoretical physics to our theories. They're just using plain old in the old days, they used to arrive on fiery chariots. They used to take like Ezekiel and Elijah and Enoch
Enoch.
out of the Bibles. They took them up into the sky on a fiery chariot, and they were able to see the arc of the world, right? So in the old days, they were using good old fashioned rocketry, rockets. That's why it's fiery. And then we think now, though, that they have, thousands of years have gone by, right? So we think now that they're using nuclear power in their vehicles, because when people get too close to UFOs, they frequently suffer from electromagnetic radiation burns. So they've switched. And that's why UFOs don't have trails coming out of the back of them or heat signatures coming off of the back of them, because they're not using those kinds of propulsion any longer.
Yeah, they've progressed like any culture given 13,000 years would have progressed, and so
Yep. And
that's what we're seeing.
they're at least 13,000 years more advanced than we are, because they, like I said, they did not lose their technology. They took it with them.
And being human beings coming from the Homo sapiens sapiens to start with, you just think about it. If you have, kids, and then their kids grow up in huge cities underneath in the earth, like maybe 2, 3, 4 miles down, the first generation would be maybe a little freaked out of having to live under the earth. But if you start growing up as kids, it's going to be is your world. And
Yeah.
then the surface world would be like our space.
It would be scary.
So it would be
Yeah, man.
scary. So, but yeah, it's just like, humans, if anything, we are adaptable too. We can adapt fairly quickly.
Yeah.
We are that. We had the 7 deadly sins, but we still adapt, and we are very resilient, and our DNA is very easy to manipulate. It's only 4 base pairs, so when we look at it, it's a cut and paste job. The humans, Homo sapiens sapien, what distinguishes us from Homo sapien is that we have the neocortex, which is that thin layer over the top of the head, which is like cardboard thick, that really gives us, with Broca's brain area, it gives us the ability to have language, to have higher thinking, and have problem solving abilities. And the whole thing. In fact, Jason Martell touched upon this at Alien Con back in last year at Pasadena. He did this whole lecture on the evidence that shows that the language ability in human beings in Homo sapiens sapiens came about 300,000 years ago, and it looked like a cut and paste job, that we didn't have language at all. Then all of a sudden we had language. This has to do with like other parts in our book, like our theories, which we haven't really touched upon that much. But
Yes, a lot of people ask me, well, are aliens involved at all? Right? Because our theory is essentially that these are branches of humanity. But the evidence of uplifting of the human race seems to actually really be there. And obviously we can't have uplifted ourselves. So we also go into some theories about what we think happened 300,000 years ago as well, not just 13,000 years ago.
right.
But if they want to hear all about that, they'll have to buy the book.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm definitely buying the book, because it's blown my mind. A lot of the stuff you've told me tonight, I've heard before as well, but you've said it tonight. It all makes sense. Everything sort of
Right.
connects, and it's it's.
I've heard that before, where people have
super
said,
interesting.
Yes.
we've heard all this before, but
Pieces.
like ufologies,
Yeah, you
other
put the
ufologists.
yeah
But for us, we actually took the pieces and tried to come to a conclusion,
yeah
an actual, and made claims that who these are
And
and what are they up to.
and I like
you know?
it, because of my family background for 3 generations, we had to actually start to examine what was happening, what had happened to me, and trying to find some explanations. I've heard people that said they've seen ghosts and things like that, which I think I've seen a couple in my lifetime. I think Leslie has once, but I've never heard of a ghost magnetizing coins,
No,
and
no.
which I've heard of like your bed being moved and that kind of stuff, but when you have actually 5 people experiencing the same thing at the same time,
Yeah,
and 2 of them are like 335 miles away, you gotta start, eventually you gotta
Yes.
question, like, what is going on?
And
And
again, it wouldn't be a haunting with at so many different locations, and
it's followed
also
me to 6 different homes.
and most
yeah.
people, when I've heard of haunting stories, I haven't heard of a blackout at the end of it. And then we
No.
all blacked out and woke up 3 hours later,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah, that
Right.
seems
is.
to be the common theme,
And, when these things were happening to me, I barely drank a beer a week, and I wasn't doing any drugs, and I didn't have a girlfriend. I was actually very chaste.
very pure.
I was very pure, so there were no drugs involved, nothing like that. So some people say, "Oh, well, how much were you drinking?" No.
We actually think there might be a psychic component to their choice of humans. Steve's family are obviously a very psychic bunch, and I keep hearing that again and again and again. Where the abductees, I'll ask them if they're very psychic, and it's like, oh yes, and our whole family was, and we think
Yeah,
that maybe, like we know that the Greys communicate telepathically. They don't they speak in the mind. They don't speak with their mouths. And we actually think that telepathy, when we did for a while, we did kundalini raising exercises, chanting and
We had
meditation.
teachers for a couple of years.
Yeah, we went to classes, and as we did these practices, we became more and more psychic and more telepathic. Steve was getting ridiculous, where he could literally read stuff straight out of my head, and
wow,
still pulls words out of my head a lot.
Words that don't even exist.
So we think that
wow.
what's happening is that this is really a human ability, a
Yeah,
human birthright that has become atrophied in us, but has been that practice of been continued in these other species that kept their technology and also kept their knowledge of how to keep these abilities active and
yeah.
in place.
Well,
And
if
that's
you,
why they can communicate mentally with us. And also, one of the craziest things is people don't realize that they are human, but they're breeding with us. Sometimes these women are reporting just having sex and getting pregnant, get a good old fashioned way,
yeah,
and some report, yes, being implanted with
Yeah, yeah, you can go back to the Bible and Nephilim that were breeding with the women of the earth were like so beautiful, and they made the giants from the Nephilim, and the gods didn't like that. They didn't like the messing around of the
yeah,
like at
that
least the Sumerian texts like Enki and Enlil,
yeah, the
the ghosts
Sumerian
of
text
that.
talk
So
about that. But yeah, it's like if they're able to breed with us so easily, to me, that's an indicator that we
yeah,
are very close
yes,
cousins to be able
we're
to do
not we're
that.
100%.
not
Now.
from Alpha Centauri, so
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And if you listen to what you're saying about the telepathic talk, if you listen to Elon Musk recently, he's talking about that's what's coming, and
oh yeah.
and sooner than we think. That's something we are going to be able to do, whether it's putting a chip in our heads or whatever they're planning to do.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's like the star children now. They talk about the star children now being born. I saw it was on YouTube, whatever, about a couple of months ago. This 1.5-year-old white baby, 18 months old, sitting at a piano. Okay, just like a piano, a trained pianist, and he's playing a simple version of Clair de Lune by Debussy. Okay, he's 18 months old and he's playing. You
Wow,
can look it up. He's playing a simplified version of Clair de Lune, and I thought
wow, man.
it's like you're hearing about these kids now being born. They call them star children, like I said, and they have heightened abilities. And even the human beings have changed in the past short period of
It
time, like
was a
7%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they've tested DNA from human beings 3,000 years ago, and our DNA has changed about 7% in that time period. which is an enormous change. It
It's
should
huge
be,
Yeah.
jump.
we're
Yeah.
talking 50,000 years it would normally take to make that much of a change in our DNA.
If not more.
We think they're sort of husbanding us or, breeding us and changing us. And since they can't get us to denuclearize just by negotiations, we think that they might be trying to denuclearize us by infiltration into our society.
Right. Hopefully so. For instance, human beings are very xenophobic. We are very afraid of things that are different than us, right? So it's also very convenient for our governments to have us keep on looking up in the sky instead of looking down below our feet, because
Mhm.
you don't want to think
Yes.
you have neighbors that are smarter than you that are living under your feet and have always been there. So you look at also to what it would do to the world economies and also to the religions. All of a
Right.
sudden they come forward and say, "We've been here. We actually been breeding with you and whatever."
And they've been
And we're
playing
advanced,
gods many
playing
times.
gods. Now we're playing space aliens, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
We're
it
too
just makes common
sophisticated
sense.
now
It would
for
it would crash world stock markets. Religions would fall
Yeah.
apart. There would be mass chaos. So
dogs and
it's
cats living together
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
and complete chaos.
It would change everything. That is for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
So interesting.
absolutely.
So
I think that's
interesting.
another reason they keep their secret.
Oh yeah. Think about it.
Yeah.
War of the Worlds, 1938. We proved that in America that people actually committed suicide because they actually
Yeah.
believed Orson Welles because they didn't listen to the beginning.
Yeah, they didn't realize it was just
Yeah.
It's a show.
a show. Yeah, they thought it was a newscast because he actually read it like it was a newscast. That was
Yeah.
part of
It was
the
so real.
original
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
So,
it was. It was very well done.
so people who didn't turn into the beginning, they thought it was really happening and freaked
Yeah.
out. I think this was
Guys,
their
you
first indicator that no, we can't tell the public.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
we've been
sure.
on for quite a while now, so I hope it's not
Yeah.
too long.
Yeah.
I tell you, you've blown my mind tonight, and I found it super interesting. I just,
you.
Stephen, you're still having these experiences? You're still
Mhm.
battling with whatever these things are. Is it something you're dealing with on a very regular basis still?
Oh
Oh, the
yeah.
last couple of months especially, it always usually about a week before the full moon, I have most of my experiences happen. I've been starting to track that over the years, and it's sometimes I will write down my dreams, they're not really dreams, they're actually really astral projections and interactions. I In the past month, I had an experience. This is one that was this kind of weird. I
They're
went
always
I
weird.
went I went I went into bed into the back bedroom by myself. Leslie was watching TV, and I just got into bed, and then I felt like somebody got right into bed right next to me. Just like a human being got in bed. And so I basically said, "Okay, what do you want?" Because this stuff has happened to me so much, right? So I ignored it. So then it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, I woke up. I was laying on my back, and I was going to get up, and before I got out of bed, this voice in my right ear said, "Husband," just right in my ear.
And it
And
was
it was slightly Asian female. And I thought that I just got up after that, said, "Well, this," but I've had that kind of thing happen to me a lot.
Yeah.
I've had where I'm going to sleep, just getting really relaxed, and there'll be like three distinct knocks behind my head on the wall.
loud,
Bang, bang, bang,
like somebody banging
threes.
on the door.
I got out of my body, I got my astral body out of, I went out of my astral body about a month ago. I had to go to the bathroom, and for whatever reason, I guess I was still in my astral body, and I just jumped out, and I went to the door, and I can't jump out. I'm 240 pounds, so I'm not a guy that just jumps out of bed, right? But I jumped out like I was like 100 pounds, just jumped out and went to the door, and the door was shut, which it always is. And I tried to open it with my hand. It says, "This is how come I can't open it?"
Because she
And
forgot
then
her
I then I
spotty.
thought, and I thought to myself, "Wait a second." So I went over and I saw my body, and it said, "Oh, did I just die?" Literally, I said, "No, Steven, wake up." And so I said, "Okay." I went back into my body. Then
So
I
you
was
laid
able to,
back into it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
have that stuff like that happening.
And then what about that black being with the golden eye
Oh, the
a
black
few
being with the
months
golden
ago?
eyes. Yeah, that was a couple 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah, I woke up, and this being was there, kind of wide, kind of tall, black, with these golden eyes, and it said, what do you want from me? What is it you want? I decided that not to be scared of it, and so I didn't say anything, but it was there, and then it was gone after a little while. And these
Wow.
things keep on happening.
All the time.
They're very frequently. It's not sleep paralysis or anything like that. They're actually real things that happen. But for me, they've happened so commonly throughout my life that I've almost kind of gotten numb to them. It's like if you get hit in the face 1,000 times, you get hit in the face 1,001 times. It doesn't mean that much. It's like
Yeah.
taking a medication. You take a painkiller, let's say, for instance, you take it 10 times, it's going to have like the effect it's supposed to have. But you take it 100 or 200 times, it's going to have diminishing returns. It's like, with heroin chasing the dragon's tail. So for me, I've kind of
Not that
like,
he's ever done her.
no, it's like, but that's when I was an acupuncturist, a Chinese acupuncturist for 20 years, we studied all these different medications, Western medications and Chinese medications. So they call it chasing the dragon's tail. So
And his Tai Chi practices, we think, are, he practiced Tai Chi for very many, many, many years. And he was even teaching it for
taught it
20,
for
20
23.
some odd years. And Tai Chi is a very meditative practice. And I think he was opening his chakras just through that practice. And then we began doing the work of deep meditation and kundalini raising, chanting, and energy work, and he became even more psychic, like I said before. And we don't know, we don't think that he's still physically being taken. We can't be sure because Whitley Strieber said he used to be taken with his sleeping wife right next to him, just take him right out of
Wow.
bed with her sleeping all the way through it. So it could still be happening, but we have found that they tend to lose interest in taking people physically after they become a certain age. That's when they start taking the kids more. I think it just might be the viability of the DNA. They want maybe younger people who are,
Less polluted.
yeah, less
Yeah.
polluted with just the toxins we take in every day in our regular lives.
Right.
So interesting. It's so, and that makes sense as well with why they start on the kids. And oh man, it's interesting. It's scary stuff, and it's hard to talk. But I really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing your experiences. And your
Thank
work
you
is
so much for
incredible.
having us.
I'm getting a
Yes.
book, that is for sure.
Okay.
Can you tell the listeners where they can find you and your book?
Oh, yes. The book, again, it's Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw. It's available on Amazon and also Ingram for bookstores out there. They prefer to use Ingram. And it comes in paperback and ebook
And Kindle.
and Kindle version for people who want to read it on their tablets. And
Tell
let's
them about your
see.
Instagram page.
Oh, yes. And I've started an Instagram page this last summer and trying to make it about, education and also, of course, posting any podcasts we do. But also when I've been seeking out others who have these experiences and trying to make posts about those individuals and their experiences as well.
We found two up in this general area here, two women that have um, quite interesting.
Unusual stories. Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
Maybe
exactly.
in the next book.
Stuff being caught on ring cameras and
Yeah.
crystals that are growing, and just they'll probably be in our next book. But
Yeah.
also too, like
Oh,
your
but let me tell them the Instagram.
Instagram. Yes.
It's leslie.shaw.author. And our Facebook is the same handle as that. And we do have a website it's whotheyarebook.com. And we have some excerpts from the book and some blogs on there as well.
And the Instagram page has reels. We've been doing that.
Yeah, video
They're
reels.
very nice
Awesome.
reels.
Yeah.
Trying to
Yeah.
make it nice.
Well, when I put an episode out, I normally do get a lot of people reaching out that say they've had same experiences, or
We'd love to hear
it
all
really
about it,
resonates with them. So I'll let you know, and I'll pass them your way if you don't mind as
Yes,
well, if they
please
want to talk
reach
to you.
out to us on Instagram.
If you'd like, later on, we can also pass along my sister's information if you're interested in hearing
Yeah,
about
100%.
Yeah, we'll give you her
those stuff.
email address. I'll
That'd
send
be
it to you.
great. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Mhm.
You guys are welcome back on Let's Get Freaky anytime. I feel like there's a lot
Anytime.
more we can talk about going forward.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Keep up the great work. I'm going to be following and reading and watching. But thank you so much, guys. I really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much for having us.
Thank
was
you. Thank you
great.
very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.